When it comes to AI and analytics, everyone talks about data being the new oil. But the truth is, if you don't have sovereignty and control over the data, it's more liability than asset. That's the problem Airbyte is aiming to solve with this new Enterprise Flex offering. It promises to give organizations unprecedented flexibility on prem, cloud, multi cloud, or hybrid while ensuring sensitive data never leaves your environment. Today I'm joined by once again Jon Whitney,
Great.
Chief Product Officer at Airbyte, to dig into what this launch means for enterprise data teams and why it matters for AI readiness. John, it's great to have you on the show.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Can you talk about how do organizations actually use your technology and what role does it play in making data AI ready?
There is the most important piece of it, which is getting all the data. It's the most obvious thing to say, but an AI LLM, an agent, is going to hallucinate if you are missing some data. It's the thing people always talk about. Am I doing all the right transformations? And of course, we do some of that. We have RAG destinations, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd say the most important piece is just how extensible and reliable we are, and that we can get your structured data, your unstructured data, we can get your metadata, all from any place where it's sitting, and get it somewhere useful for an AI use case. So I'd say that's the most important. I have lots of other things I could say about it, but I'm going to leave it there for now.
You just announced Enterprise Flex. What problem were customers struggling with that led to build this?
This very much was a pull from our customer base. I'm glad you framed it that way, because it, like any good enterprise company, we talk to our customers and they give us feedback and we evolve. The problem they were facing is that, especially in an age of AI use cases, they don't want some of the most sensitive data and the most sensitive silos to leave their network. So we have a self-managed enterprise product that we were offering. And the problem with that is just that, of course, some people still need it. And it's just that you're now deploying the whole solution, right? And so there's just a bit of a higher TCO. So what we were really asked to do is, could you run kind of most of the configuration in the cloud, but just keep the data in my network? And so that's how we came up with Enterprise Flex. It is a multi-cloud hybrid deployment. We can handle multiple data planes in both Enterprise Flex and Self-Managed Enterprise. The only difference is where is the control plane sitting. And in Enterprise Flex, we are hosting the control plane. And Self-Managed Enterprise, you, the customer, are hosting the control plane. And so that is it's a huge ask from our customers. So many of our customers are excited about this. Before we even launched it, we have people who've bought it, because it totally changes the game in how people who are doing AI, I want to bring it back to your AI question. If you can get all the data from everywhere and you need to put it somewhere, but it's going to potentially leak out to the internet, well, that's a problem, right? Some of the most sensitive data that you want to feed to your LLMs is already in your network.
Of course, you are announcing it today, but you may have run beta, you may have worked with partners. What feedback you received from them where they were like, hey, this has changed our day-to-day operations?
One of our early adopters that told us that first of all, it's kind of an interesting kind of business part of it, is that this product lets us close real enterprise deals a lot faster, because the kind of proof points are faster, and we can drive adoption in the customer faster, because there's just a lot less to do to set up, right? And you can prove to people that the data stays local and sovereign very quickly without having to do a massive proof of value, proof of concept. So I think that's one piece of it, is that just there, and it sounds silly, but kind of the internal business case that anybody has to do when they're building a reason to buy a tool and go to their procurement team, et cetera, is just significantly easier. The ROI is just easier to compute. And so that's what we've heard so far, is that they can just move faster to adopt. And that has all the downstream implications of, they now have standardized their pipelines, and they're getting they're getting their value quite a bit faster, and they can just make a business case that scales. It's probably a good moment to mention that we price on capacity, which I'm sure we've talked to you about before. But this idea that when you're buying Enterprise Flex, you're not paying us by the volume of data that we're moving. You're paying for the capacity to move a certain amount of data. It's a unit we call a data worker. And so all of that combined, the ease of POV, the ease of computing what your needs are, it's a bit like buying internet bandwidth, right? You can just be like, okay, I need a gigabyte connection, and that's what I need. And it's just easy to kind of figure out what you're going to want given your use case, and not have to be down there and computing the per gig you're going to move on Tuesday versus Wednesday, and how's it going to go. So those two things together, the combination of the data staying sovereign, three things really: the data staying sovereign, the capacity pricing, and the ease with which we can make a business case, is what we've heard from the early adopters as why they love this.
Flex can run on-prem, in the cloud, across multiple clouds, or hybrid, and all on the same code base. Why is that so significant, and how does it reduce complexity compared to alternatives?
Okay, love this question. I love this question because I've been around startups for decades now, and technology frequently kind of gets stitched together through acquisition, et cetera, right? I've been through that so many times. The beauty of Airbyte is that we're building it all based on our open core, right? So it's all the same code. You can deploy Airbyte Self-Managed Enterprise, Enterprise Flex, our Cloud Pro offering, our open source offering. It's the same bits. It's the same protocol. Even when we're launching data activation, it's the same protocol, the same bits, etc. So you get this kind of unified platform that's all in one place, built by one company and easy to use, but remains open source and built based on an open core concept. So you're really staying away a bit from the vendor lock-in problems, right? So you kind of have the best of both worlds there. And I think again, it's hard to really imagine the extent to which that matters to people. But I will say this: like, when you have something that's built and everything just kind of was built the same way on the same code base, and the ease of use is exponentially better than if you're switching between things that are integrated. So I know we're in the data integration space, but I love saying this: Airbyte, while it works for data and helps integrate data, it doesn't require you to integrate tools, right? And a lot of people who are stitching together the data platforms end up doing tool integration so that they can achieve data integration, right? And so I think we're just changing the game there by doing this all in a single platform that was built natively.
A lot of vendors talk about sovereignty, but often the control plane and data plane are tightly coupled. Can you unpack how you decouple them and why that's a game changer for governance and compliance?
It's super simple. It truly is just like, if you think of what Airbyte does, you have the configuration of your sources, destinations, and jobs and connections, right? And what you'd have in there typically is like, how would you authenticate with the source and the destination and all that. So what we've done is we've taken the configuration of that and we've kept it in our control plane. The data plane is where your secrets live. Okay, and the data plane, it's just kind of an inversion idea. The data plane is this standalone piece of software. It just knows how to phone home to the control plane and say, give me the configuration that I'm supposed to run, right? So all of that has nothing sensitive in it, really, right? Like, it's certainly not your secrets are not in there, right? It's just the configuration of what source to run, how often to connect it, et cetera, what streams to do, some of your mappings, et cetera, will live in there. But anything sensitive lives in the data plane. And the data plane just needs to be able to phone home to our cloud to get its configuration. That's all it needs to do. Once it has that, it runs everything standalone. So to your point about at runtime, when we are moving data from source to destination, again, that can be for kind of ingestion, typical ELT stuff, or it can be for data activation when we're going from a warehouse to an API as a destination. It's all the same thing to us. And that all runs wherever you deployed us. You could have deployed us in your private cloud. You could have deployed us on premise somewhere on some bare metal. Like, you want it to. It could be in our cloud if you want it to be, right? And again, some people, multinationals, might have a part of their workload that can happily run in our cloud. And there could be a data plane in Thailand or in EMEA or where there's different rules about what can go where, and then it's fine. As long as that thing can talk to our control plane, and we segregate things by workspaces, et cetera, and you can have different rights and all that. That's all managed in our control plane. So it just, again, this was pretty easy for us to do. Something I want to add on here. We didn't acquire another company to do this or anything like that. We just kept our protocol and just kind of repackaged the same bits that have been running forever in open source since we were started. So it was easy to do, and then we had to do a lot of testing. So.
The release also mentions data activation, moving data back into application like hotspot. The release also mentioned data activation, moving data back into application like HubSpot or Salesforce. How does that change the way enterprises can apply AI in real workflow?
So many versions of this, and I think we're just tapping the beginning of it. So I don't know what our customer base is going to do. We're just launching it right now. But I think one of the last times we talked, I was thinking of predictions for the, and I think what we're going to see is a lot of the use cases where you've put a bunch of unstructured data somewhere, you've processed it in a lake house somewhere, and now you have something that's kind of semi-structured that you want to bring back into LLM's context. And so that's one of the ways in which I think we'll see our data activation tool potentially be used. I think even, you could go after an LLM has processed something, and now you have some results of it, and now you need to get the results of that somewhere basic, like in your Salesforce opportunities, and you need to push results back there. That might be another way in which our data activation is used. So it's kind of, I think, TBD on where people are going to see the most value of those two things. And I'm sure I haven't even thought of some of the other ways in which it's going to happen. I think the thing that we know to be constant there is that people are going to use LLMs to look at their data, their super secret, super sensitive data, make business decisions based on it, and take the results of those decisions and make sure those results are available to the humans who need to process them, or to other agents that need to do downstream work with it. And so we know that pipes are needed, and we are in the business of constructing pipes. So we think we're going to be used. Exactly how, TBD.
You folks claim 5 to 10 times performance gain in the platform. What does that look like in practice for a data engineer team trying to support AI and analytics projects?
Oh, great question. I mean, and it's one of those things that when you're building infrastructure, if you're building pipes, nobody wants the infrastructure to be the bottleneck, right? We certainly don't want that. So I think as the kind of scale and shape and size of data has grown in our lifetime of a company, we have been constantly investing in making sure that we're not that. So I think one of the kind of AI impacts of it is that, well, there's no point doing a bunch of AI work to improve your efficiency and save some money if that means that you're suddenly spending more money on your infrastructure, and your warehouse costs are going up, and you're like, okay, well, I saved money on some downstream decision making, but I've quintupled my spend on my warehouse. That's kind of a net nothing for you. So we want to make sure that you can go do your AI use cases, and that we kind of flatten the curve of how that impacts your spend with data. So that's why we've been investing so much in this. And that was kind of a 2020 word of flatten the curve, but I think it really is how we think about it.
With more than 600 connectors and a no-code AI connector builder, it sounds like you're betting big on openness. Of course, open source is your soul. Why is openness critical for enterprise adoption today?
There's a couple different ways to look at this. So there's a very internal way to look at it, which is how can we scale our product without having to spend the time on hiring experts in each connector, right? So we believe that the expertise already exists. That's why we've invested so much in a community. And that, the word community really means what it means. It's a network of people who can influence and provide value to each other. And we're kind of a conduit for that, right? And so that's why we have our connector marketplace. People can upload connectors that they've written and other people can use them, right? So that's one of the values you get from Airbyte, is that you don't have to wait for Airbyte. You can tap the power of the community. So, in the age of AI and what you trust and all that, I am just, maybe it's religion, but I just so believe in the power of that openness and community to provide trust. Again, you don't, obviously Airbyte certified means we've tested it more, etc. But there's so many eyeballs on what we do that there's no real secrets there. Right. So I think in a world where you want to make sure that your kind of non-deterministic LLM behavior is trustworthy, you want to trust the data coming through your pipes. That's foundational. To this point about community and AI and extensibility, I do think that there's this thing about the kind of secret silo that we or any other vendor hasn't heard of before, your proprietary in-house silo. And that is accessible because of our extensible community-based thing. If you built an extensible thing for a community, it also means that you can connect to a thing we've never heard of, and you don't have to wait for Airbyte.
Many companies are stuck with fragmented pipelines and siloed data. How does Flex lower the total cost of ownership and operational overhead while still giving enterprises the flexibility that they need?
If I could try to tie it all together, because I think it is all tied all together, to really have to defragment your world, just use a hard drive term from back in the day. But if you want to take your data platform and really make it, if you, our customer, want to flatten your curve of ownership, as in your organization, you're providing more and more data to more and more of your other organizations, and you can't do that at a linear increase of your cost. You need something like Airbyte, because you need to be able to touch every silo, right? You need to be able to do it in a sovereign way. If you can't do that with a tool, then there's certain things you just can't access, and now you're into tool fragmentation again right away. It just pulls you right back there, right? Either the silo can't be covered or it can't be moved in the right network way, then you're into multiple tools or in-house tools, right? And if you can't then either move it to an LLM with an activation pipeline or post LLM move it into some other system with it, if you need a different tool for that, again, you're back into tool fragmentation and total cost of ownership. So that's why we are so excited about this 2.0 moment for us, is because it is the whole thing stitched together that makes it, reasonable for a data team to have a simpler platform to manage.
Now let's talk about something important: security and compliance. They're always top concern, especially for global organizations. How does Enterprise Flex help companies meet regional requirements around data residency and sovereignty?
I mean, I think the most obvious way is that you can deploy a data plane in a compliant environment, and then it is compliant. There are some industries and customers who are still going to want our fully self-managed. We're kind of think of it as like air-gapped, right? You really don't. You want to make sure not even your metadata leaves. No big deal. You can take our whole thing and deploy it with our self-managed enterprise. For Flex, it's meeting people who don't need that level and who can handle just the data itself, but don't worry if the configuration is sitting up in our cloud. And so that's the nuance I put there. As to being able to be in a compliant environment, again, the data plane is a thing that you deploy, right? All it needs is network access to our cloud. So you can put it where you need it to be. And if that place is compliant, you're good.
Looking ahead, how do you see this shaping Airbyte's role in the AI and data ecosystem over the next few years?
I do think, again, what we see us evolving from is, said kind of very bluntly, we were mostly an open source ELT tool, right? And now we see ourselves as a data movement platform that you can build all of your movement enterprise-wide on our technology. And so that's a huge change for us.
Jon, thank you so much for walking us through the launch and what it means for enterprises navigating AI and data governance. Thanks for your insights, and I look forward to chatting with you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed these great questions, and I'm really excited to chat whenever you want.
And back to our audience, if your organization is struggling with data sovereignty, integration at scale, or making data AI ready, Airbyte's Enterprise Flex is one to watch. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more conversations right here on TFiR. Thanks for watching.